welcome. I am Jonnita Stanton. We have Reginald Perryman, Kashka Williams, and we are TSARE. This is the There's Something About Real Estate podcast where we talk all things real estate.
You gotta call me Reg on the show.
Reg.
Just Reg.
It's Reg.
You know what name? When people be like, real estate Reg.
I like that. What's wrong with it? It's a
Real
range.
estate Reg.
You seem like some of your uncle or something.
Real estate Reg.
It's Reggie is real estate.
Reggie is real estate.
Yeah.
Reggie is real estate. Okay. All right. So we're going to jump into, what's our focus for tonight? Evictions, landlords selling their properties and leaving the tenants out in the cold. I didn't get a chance to
Is
read
it really
that.
out in the cold?
Yes.
You
Literally.
think so?
Yes.
I got a couple people.
I feel like literally
It's
they're
right
It's
now.
about to be summer though.
They're going to be out there. Okay. It's going to be cold at night some nights.
Yeah.
It's cold on the pavement.
So, okay, well, why are landlords all of a sudden selling these properties? Or is it all of a sudden?
It's not all of a sudden.
Gradual.
I mean, most tenants don't pay attention to the real estate market. It's not really a need to for most tenants. But if you pay attention to the market, you really don't have to question why your landlord is selling or raising the rent.
Should expect it.
Yeah, you should expect it at some point. So what most people don't understand is your landlord is a business owner and investor. What's the number one focus of being an investor?
To make money.
As much as you can off of your investment. So if you've been paying $900 a month for rent for the past 8 years, and all of a sudden there's a huge increase in values and rental rates, what you think your landlord gonna do?
Price check.
And inflation.
Yeah, inflation.
You know what I mean? Everybody think, well, I've been here for 5 years, like the rent's supposed to stay the same. No, that means it's supposed to, your rent is supposed to go up.
Right.
A certain amount. Everything has been inflated.
So if you're a tenant, right, and the roof is bad and the roof is leaking, you expect your landlord to fix it, right?
Yep.
5 years ago compared to now, what would it cost you to fix that roof?
Almost double, maybe even
Right.
triple. You know what I mean? It's a lot more.
Right, and if the landlord has to pay for that, it only makes sense that they want to be compensated for the additional costs and fees.
But I want to clarify. So you're saying it's double and more right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. It's much more expensive now to do any repair or to fix anything or do any rehabs than prior years.
It's crazy because even if you're listening to like the industry talks or economists speak, they're using like the pricing of materials as like a comparable to what's happening in the housing market, you know, in terms of inflation.
Right.
Definitely. I mean,
It
it's
go
got to
hand
be.
in hand, though. At some point in time, even if a landlord can afford to maintain a property, even with the increased costs of labor and materials, it's only going to last so long before they have to increase rents or just sell the property. So if I brought a house for $80,000 and now you're telling me it's worth $190 and you paying me $900 a month when the market rental rate is $1,450, I mean, that's just not good business all the time to keep taking it at a loss.
Yeah, you're like, what, a 50% almost increase.
Right.
Agreed. So the reason why is what? Because of inflation. It was a number of different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Prices went up. Cost of living has went up.
Right.
And so if you're in business for a profit, then, you know, costs everywhere are going to go up. So, yeah, you can't expect, you know, things to stay the same. And then, you know, you have like some tenants out here that are, you know, they have a lot of audacities as well.
Yeah.
Well, on the flip side, you do have to have some compassion for the tenants, right? Because they don't know. Again, as a tenant, your mindset is to not pay attention to them. You're not paying attention to the real estate
market. Landlords should be sending their tenants market updates
Like,
quarterly.
Look, actually, realtors might need to be doing that.
So true.
Getting them, hey, stop renting.
So you have some landlords that will actually increase the rent by a certain percentage every year. So
Already.
then it's not sticker shock. So I kind of think it's a disservice to some tenants if you leave them at 2018 rental rates, and now all of a sudden you decide to sell the property, and they get back out here in the market now, And it's like, oh, I was renting in Southfield for $900 for a 3-bedroom, 1,200 square foot house. You not getting that. You got to move to a whole different city, whole different demographic. It's like
one city you can move to.
Well,
for $900.
Barely.
it's a few cities, but I mean, now you're getting into a whole different. It's what you're gonna get is different, right?
Less bang for your buck for sure.
Yeah.
So the question that I have is this like the sell high theory. So like if you're speaking on investing, so whether it's stock or bonds or real estate, we're in a space right now to where you're not really, I don't want to say that, but so people probably bought a little lower back when, and now it's time to sell,
Right.
because you sell when it's high, right?
Yeah, and a new landlord, they paying so much for the property, they can't afford to rent to you at those old rental rates. So what you had is no longer, and that's just it. Like I was looking at a old Dick's Sporting Good commercial, right? So they was advertising. Well, I remember my first pair of Jordans being like $89, the red, white, and black ones. But they was advertising, they was advertising Jordans for $39, right? And I'm like, damn, I could have brought like 100 pair of those and just kept them. The glue probably would have fell apart, but still.
Right, the white parts would have oxidized yellow.
You just think the market made that shoe worth $100+, right?
Yep.
Inflation made that shoe. Like, it's not many gym shoes you can buy, Nikes at that, for $39 anymore.
Yeah,
right? So
they're the ones you don't want. That's like what we saying about the house.
So it's the same with the houses. So you look 20, 30 years ago, it's just not going to be the same. So anytime you're in one place for one amount, if you're not paying attention to the market, you're going to get caught by surprise once you get put back out here in it. It's almost like you're forced to deal with it at that point.
That's why I think the compassion is a little. I mean, you're gonna have compassion for people in general,
right?
But if you was just in order for you to not know what's going on in the real estate market, you have literally had your head, what they say, under a rock or whatever.
But it's not. But most tenants, it's not their life.
But they should have been hearing it from other their friends and everybody else talking like, bruh, when I'm just moved, now I'm paying such and such for this for this house. Like you've been around, you're still living, you're still on planet Earth. So you should hear from people around you, people, your colleagues, people at church. You should be hearing what's going on in the market, and you should have started preparing for that, because this is not something that just happens suddenly.
Right.
This isn't something that happened the last 6 months. This has been going on it's been increasing since like 2018.
One thing about reality, it don't matter to you until it happened to you.
Smack you on the face.
Right? So a lot of people, again, it's not their way of life. It's not something they think about every day, even though they're hearing it. But it's like...
So should the landlords care? Property owners that are renting
they don't.
to people?
They say they do, but they don't, right?
Yeah, so some people have a personal relationship with their tenants. Some people have a business relationship with their tenants. So I think it just depends on the relationship, but you still have to make the decision that's in your best interest for business. And so does that tenant, because tenants leave too. They're like, this house is crap, I'm overpaying, I'm leaving.
I got a question for all three of us.
Yep.
All three of us are renters.
You going to ask yourself a question
I'm going
too?
to ask myself too. I'm going to answer the question.
I knew he was crazy.
You a renter?
No, landlords, I'm sorry. All three of us are landlords, and we rent homes to renters. So do you care?
Do I care?
About when you had to increase the rental rate on one of your rentals? Do you care?
No, I just tell them up front what this is. I don't really have a personal relationship with my tenants. Like, there's things that I'll do that other landlords may not do, but I don't have. It's just a strictly business relationship. Your rent is going to increase by this much every year that you hear. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the year, we have to review your lease if we're going to consider renewing your lease based on what type of tenant you were. So it's strictly business. So I care about their well-being as a human, but from a business standpoint, I have to do what's in the best interest. This is not my house. I'm investing for my daughter.
Facts.
Right?
There you go. So you're taking away from somebody that I care about.
Exactly.
That you actually do care about, right?
So if you're going to let $50 next year, a month next year, impact you, then there's other tenants out there.
But even if it was yours and it was for you in your retirement, does that change the scenario?
But he's just saying that's even stronger. He just uses the thought like it's you or my kid.
Yeah,
because that's how I really tell people. Like, and people they think that that's that you're being facetious, right? But it's a real thing. You really are taking money or food out of my kid's mouth, right?
Some landlords live in rent to rent.
Yeah,
like a lot of tenants don't understand that.
Yeah,
like your just because they're a landlord don't mean they're rich.
Right.
Just because somebody own a business don't mean they wealthy, right? Some landlords literally live in rent to rent. They got a $800 mortgage on that property, and you paying $1,100 a month. Yep. The margin is slim.
I'm getting ready to serve 2 eviction notices on Monday.
Yeah,
I promise.
So when you don't pay, you still got to pay the mortgage company. You still got to pay the property taxes, and that's just what it is.
But that's all I'm saying. Like, people, have expectations. Like, the expectations are crazy. One of my tenants have been, like, the tenant needed help probably 12 months ago.
Right.
And she was able to receive help, that's that long ago. And then once the help ran out, I kind of just waited, I think, probably like 4 months. And then I had a conversation that was basically like, okay, can you just let me know when you can move? And the person told me, because I was trying to be nice about it, you know what I mean?
You waited too long.
Well, I mean, so that's the nice part or the caring part, and then some other parts that I prefer not to discuss.
You gotta do that paperwork.
Well, I can still do the paperwork, and I'm still. It's hard to explain, but I guess all I'm saying is I did. You go to people and you say, "Hey, I need the property now."
Right.
And then the person acts like almost as if you're not supposed to ask for your property back.
Well, I think that's one of the mistakes too a lot of landlords make. Like, I really don't know my tenants like that.
I don't know the person either.
Usually, I personally still use a property manager.
Oh, okay.
It's rare that one of my tenants I actually know personally. Like, I may have met them in the process of doing business or signing some paperwork, but I have somebody, I have a buffer in between. I don't have to deal with that.
But I don't think this is a situation of where a buffer is necessarily needed or anything like that. It's just more
Why did you wait 4 months, though?
Just because I did.
See,
that's what he's saying. So the point is, I guess the point that he's making is that if you would have had that buffer, so the property manager, they make their money on receiving the rent. So they wouldn't have waited 4 months. They would have been getting them. They would have got served immediately. You know what I mean? The first time that they were late.
Do your paperwork first, then be compassionate. So you always got that basis in place. This is the proper and legal way to do things. If you want to extend it, then you can give that grace if you want.
So that's the positive and negative. Because I'm the same way as Jonnita. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the positive and negative with that is, with having that compassion is, I don't know, I think you are too. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
I think you're the same way.
to a certain extent, but it depends on the history with the person too.
Right.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. That's a good idea. Like, just using the property manager that's a huge buffer.
Right.
What I would say is using a property manager would help me when I'm not necessarily paying attention. This situation for me personally has nothing to do with it wasn't a person. I just chose not to serve the paperwork.
Right.
No matter what anybody's opinion of it is, I just chose not to serve the paperwork. And then I decided to have a conversation with the person to basically say, well, here, this is what's going to be going on.
Right.
Just to give an opportunity, because the person could have said, okay, give me 30 days. Person probably could have said, I need 60 days.
Right.
And I probably would have said, well, that's pushing it. However, you know what? But when a person responds and like they can't even see, because there are going to be situations where maybe the landlord may be willing to give some grace or help or whatever, but a person has to also have the ability to be able to see that, because they can't end up out on their ass if they don't.
I think the big problem is a lot of people, and I don't know if this is the case with yours, so you got to be careful with who you're renting out to. Like when people are renting out to people that are not, I want to say people that are receiving assistance, like in the case that you explained, because they're used to somebody giving them something all the time. You know what I mean? That's where that comes from. You know what I mean? They're the whole time.
You're depending on a third party to pay it. So if that third party stopped, now both you and the tenant kind of stuck.
So in this particular situation, the credit check was done. The person had like 700 scores, had a job paying 3 times the ability.
Right.
When the person had the job before, things came into play to change the scenario, was a good paying tenant. So when it was like, okay, my scenario has changed and now I need to go and try to get some help with this, I didn't have any problems with that. And then the help came pretty fast.
No, that's different. So you got somebody who's making an effort.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that. You're giving them some grace time because they're still making an effort to pay. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the people that wouldn't even fill out the paperwork.
Yeah. And I think that's still a good point, though. Just being careful with the mindset. So maybe even saying, all right, this person has these abilities, but if you ask a few more questions or about like history, maybe you may see where, okay, it looks good on paper, but the person's mindset may still not necessarily be there, because you have people who come into hardships and they still have like an urgency to pay.
Yeah, because you need a house above everything. That should be your largest, your most important bill.
We going to Ziegman's.
Yeah.
Hey, look. Yeah. So let's talk about on the flip side, though. So as a tenant, what are some of the signs you should know when your landlord is getting ready to sell the property?
Improvements.
Like what type of improvements?
New roof.
New roof.
Roof, windows. That porch that was all crumbled up. They finally
they constantly making appointments because the inspector has to come for a walkthrough.
Right. The curb appeal. You think that's a good one? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what should a tenant do at that point?
You should have been, if right now you're a tenant and you haven't started making plans, you're kind of too late. You know what I mean? You should have been putting yourself in a position to possibly buy if you had to.
So here's what I recommend to tenants in this market right now. I recommend you call your landlord and say, hey, I know the market is hot. I just want to know, do you have any plans on selling? Mm-hmm. If you're month to month, you need to ask that like now. Mm-hmm. If your lease is going to end within the next 6 months, you need to ask that now. Mm-hmm. Because if they are planning on selling, well, what's the price? Then you need to see if maybe you can qualify to buy it. Mm-hmm. Because a tenant in a property has a huge advantage over the average buyer coming into the market, because now you're not competing for that property if the landlord is going to give you first right of refusal.
And no marketing expense, so you save the seller money there.
Yeah, you saving the seller a commission.
Yep.
So there's a lot of benefits to asking that question. Mm-hmm. Can the landlord just put the tenant out like I'm selling the property?
No.
What do they have to do?
Of an eviction?
No, they have to finish their
notice.
They have to finish their. Well, if they're still
notice
under.
To quit.
No, they can't do that. If you have a lease, you have to honor the lease.
Right.
You have to honor the lease first. If you're month to month, you have to serve them, let them know that you're
a notice to quit.
Yeah. Now it's
And they can't tell you. They got to put it in writing. Facts. They have to go through the proper process. Now, if you have a lease, your landlord can still sell the property, but whoever buys it have to assume that lease. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So those are some things that tenants need to know.
But what if the tenant is behind on anything, utilities or rental payments?
Yeah, if you're behind on payments, then they probably was going to evict you anyway.
Yes, that is breaking the contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what people don't understand is if a person is not going to court saying, pay me these dollars, they just want possession of their property,
Yep.
it's likely that the good judge will grant that.
Yeah.
Right. So another thing too, like if your landlord, so you got to know your tenant rights because it's different rights. So they got to give you 30-day notice, right?
Yeah.
Whether you fail to pay or they just want you out of the property. But you need to understand your lease as well. I tell tenants this though, like people be like, oh, my landlord is this, or I don't like my landlord. I say, is the landlord keeping the house up? Yeah. Are you able to afford your rent and pay it on time? Say, yeah. And then they say, well, I just don't like the house no more. And I say, you might want to rethink that because what you're paying and what you're going to get for the money, you really not going to like the next house.
Period.
Unless you're willing to pay for it. And when you leave this house, you're not going to be able to come back at that price. So
all my tenants are at 2018 rental rates right now. But that used to be so that's always been a strategy of mine as a landlord was to have the best house at a lower rental rate. Right. Because, people don't understand turnover kills your profit more than anything else. I prefer to have a tenant in there. So I prefer to have a tenant in there paying $100 less per month that's going to stay there for 5 years than have somebody turning over every year because now I got to go in there and spruce the place up. Yeah, and you had that vacancy period where you losing a month or two of rent. Yep. And at the end of the year, it average out about the same. Yep. I use that strategy too.
Why don't landlords or property owners want to tell their tenants that they're selling the property? Why do they have to find out? By way of seeing it online.
Yeah, that's a good one. So a lot of times they don't want to spook you because they don't know if they got a deal or they're only selling it or they're only trying to sell it to other investors. So I know investors, they won't put the property on the market. They just want me or their property manager to find another investor that wants to buy the property turnkey. And the only thing the tenant is going to know is they're still making their payments to the property manager. So they don't know necessarily at that point that ownership changed until they get a letter, but nothing changes about their lease or anything. But then you have some landlords that are they just like that. They just like, hey, the property sold, you got 30 days to get out, we going to be closing. And a lot of tenants get mad and start going.
Yeah, I think they'd be scared. I think landlords are worried about that. We get him on. I think that landlords are worried about the tenant's response. Like you said, sometimes they don't even understand. They take it personal. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you selling the house from under me? No, not necessarily. You're probably going. Depends. You may be able to still stay here if I'm selling it to an investor. I got a listing now. The lady been there 11 years, and she was like, oh, do I got to move? She was like, I just really like my house, and I hate to move. I've been here 11 years, and every time we have a showing, she called me and say, are they buying it to invest or they going to let me stay here? Oh, these people sound like they was going to move in. They buying it to move in. How long I got? Like, literally every showing, this the same exact call, and she always say, my house. Yeah, it's her. I don't want to leave my house. Say, you already brought it. Yeah. 11 years. 11 years, yeah. So, and when you talk to her about buying it, oh, I don't want to do all that. If I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to get something better than this. I'm like, well, you can't help her. So that's it's just a difference in mindset. But yeah.
So why do they take it personally?
Because it's their
mindset. We just like you just said, it's the mindset. They a lot of times, a lot of renters never owned anything, so they don't understand the responsibility or the the stress that it takes to own a home. So they don't understand why they can't comprehend properly because they've never been in that situation.
Right. So what you got? Is this article?
Yeah, so it's a USA Today article, and it says black women get evicted more than anyone else, right? During the eviction crisis. So it's got like a story of a lady, she been here several years. paying $24.90 a month. Well, she's been there 4 years without any problems, and then, you know, she fell on hard times. She's working as a nurse. She raised her kids there, and after the eviction bans ended, she was forced to move, but she had to move into like a small apartment because that was the only thing that would accept her because she had the eviction on her record. So they're saying, and this is in Washington, somewhere in Washington, King County it is. So they're saying black women accounted for 16% of the evictions, and they're only like 5% of the renter population. So those are some things we got to look at, how it's impacting different communities too, right? And what is the cause of the eviction? Like you said, your person, like this lady, was paying on time when they had the ability to pay, but what type of assistance is out there to keep them in their homes? But when we first had like the programs where they would give rental assistance, there was a lot of tenants. I think they said like 70% or something wouldn't even fill out the paperwork. So it was like, screw you, landlord, I'm not paying you, right? It got to the point, it was so bad that they had to start allowing landlords to fill out the paperwork and submit it in. So just imagine that you're behind on your rent, you're not working, but the government or the city or state is saying, we'll pay your rent, just fill out this paperwork. But you just feel like the landlord don't deserve it. You know what I'm saying? So now, and this is what, you know, I was telling people back then, be careful how you treat your landlord in this time. Just because you fell on hard times, still communicate. Now, here it is a year, 2 years later, and since then, now we're not talking about from when the landlord brought it, just from that time to now, they probably had a backlog of evictions where they couldn't get to you. But now the landlord is like, wait, my house is worth $25,000 more than it was 2 years ago, and I'm behind on my mortgage because you wasn't paying me. What do you expect somebody to do, right? So, and now the eviction bans are being removed, so like they just following the paperwork, you out of there.
Or I'm dipping in my savings. Yeah,
but imagine, so this is another reason I was telling tenants, file the paperwork, stay in communication, because now if you do get evicted, right, and you go back out into the market, one, if you wasn't working or if you did go back to work, some people chose to just collect unemployment. So you got bad work history now, you got an eviction, and everybody can't use the lockdown and everything as an excuse anymore. So you going back into, you applying for these rental properties, and they like, no, we're not accepting you. You wouldn't even make the effort to pay with money that wasn't yours. And we see you was collecting money during that time, and you still didn't pay your rent, or even pay a portion of the rent, right? So what new landlord is going to accept that? So it's going to be tough out here,
especially now where
it's tough.
I mean, the supply is less than the demand by a lot. So
and then the people, the requirements to rent is crazy, like 2.5 times. So whatever the rent is, they want you to have 2.5 times, 3 times the income. They're looking at credit scores now. Plus. It's like, it's literally comparable
like you buying a house.
And then on top of that, if I go to Shaka and apply with his property manager, I got to pay an application fee. And then Shaka got 23 people. He only can accept one person. So then I come to you and I'm like, well, can I use my application and report from, and you like, no, you got to pay my application fee. It's people out here, they paying $300 and $400 in fees and not getting approved for nothing.
To the side for your application fee.
So, yeah, you got to rethink about moving. If you're in a good rental property and it's decent, you really got to know your next moves 3 to 6 months in advance if you're a tenant.
At least.
Yeah.
What about our Section 8 folks?
For most of them are good, but it's still, you got to think when that lease is up. So if your lease is up anytime less than 6 months, you need to already be looking at what's out here in the market, within my price range. You need to always be prepared for the next 6 months in advance.
Now, as a realtor, what about the people who come to you and want a lease but they think that they can shop, like.
Oh, for the rental rates?
Not for the rental rates, but for the property, like the perfect property or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you better get in where you fit in.
Here's the thing. If you,
and I shouldn't say that they think they can, because people could do whatever they want. But
yeah.
No, they think, because it's not factually speaking, you can't.
Right.
It's just like buying a house right now.
Yeah.
Renting a house is just like buying a house. There's 10 renters. You know what I mean?
But you have less opportunity. Like for people that are leasing.
Right.
One, but people that are leasing, it's kind of like, here's your 4 properties.
Right.
Pick one of these.
Just like buying a house, though.
But it's saying, here's the thing: you have to be honest with yourself. Like, what do you need versus what you want?
Yeah.
We all want 2 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms if we can. But if you need a 3-bedroom and a place of shit, then go get it, right?
What can you afford?
Because
right?
what can you afford, and not only what can you afford, it's
What
about
area?
what's available.
Yeah.
Right.
What can you afford? What area do is the location more important than the square footage?
Right.
Is the square footage more important than anything else?
You need a roof over your head, and you need enough bedrooms to accommodate you. You can work out the bathroom. I see so many people overlook and pass by 1 bathrooms, and then they still looking 4 months later because they don't have 2 bathrooms or 1.5 bath.
That's a new thing.
I got a text message today, but this is not from a tenant, from a buyer. Like, it's the deal breaker is 1 bathroom.
Yeah, and it's like the market only gonna present so many properties at a time. So either you gonna wait, and then guess
this was
what?
The person that went and bought a car while she was in the loan process.
Yeah, guess what? When the 2 bathroom come up, it's gonna be more, and it's gonna be more competition for it. So it's not even a guarantee you're gonna get the 2 bathroom. You know what I'm saying? So you guys, little boys can go out back.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and when you think about it, if it's less than 4 people in the household, how often do y'all really clash over the bathroom?
I don't know. I haven't been in a 1 bathroom since I was in
But I'm just saying,
college. I mean,
but I'm just saying, on a day-to-day basis, if mom and dad or mom or the adults are at work from 8 to 5, you know what I'm saying, and kids, everybody get home, it's like, come on now. I mean, it's necessary,
Like
but I'm
if
saying,
Donovan was on here, he would beg to differ.
It's tough.
I used to be screaming like, "Don't go in the bathroom."
but it's tough. But what I'm saying is, if that's what's available, or 4 months later you still haven't found a 2-bed, and think if you're only renting, it's temporary anyway. Right? Until
depends, unless you're that lady that's standing there for 11 years. But I got a question though. Yeah. So back to your, so that study said that Black women are being evicted at much higher rates than everybody else. Why do y'all think that is?
They said 16%.
They might be renting. They may be the majority of renters. I mean, not.
They only 5% of renters though.
They 5% of renters, and they've been evicted 16%.
Yeah.
I'm saying they may be the majority renter from other nationalities of women.
Or it could have something to do with income levels. Because, I mean, they talk about the county. So if here we took Oakland County and we divided up everything by race and gender, and we looked at the income differences, probably the lower income demographic is probably going to have harder times with evictions.
Yeah. That's in the world. I mean, I would say that's in the United States at least.
Yeah.
And that's going to be
Black women. We have to be careful. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, when it comes to, I think, Black women, some of the hardships. So, like, environmentally, how did the person come up? Where are they now? How many children do they have? And how much income do they have in comparison to, like, all
other
of those
races and other
No,
genders?
I didn't mean in comparison, but, like, it's almost like debt to income. So, like, a Black woman's debt may not just be like, a car and student loans. It may be a car, student loans, plus these kids, plus I need a therapist, plus I don't make enough money,
I mean, you can finish what you were saying.
No, I was going to say we have to be, the reason I brought this article up, because they say Black women make up 5% of the renter population, but 16% of the evictions. Those numbers might be right. but I was watching it was some episode on HBO, and they was talking about discrimination. So it was this couple, it was 2 females. They both identified as females. One was African American, one was Asian.
Look at that politically correct. Go ahead.
I know what I'm doing. I'm in real estate. You ain't gonna catch me slipping, ma'am.
Thank you.
If you want to be ma'am, you ma'am. I ain't fighting. You can swim with the girls if you want. So, the African American lady got denied for a home loan, right? Mm-hmm. And she made more money than the Asian lady. So the report was like, oh, this is discrimination, and she make less money, but she still qualified for the home when she went in there. Now, being in real estate and knowing finances, is right. You picked it.
Don't
so
matter
it's
if you
like
make
just
more
because
money.
you make more money, it's other factors. What's your credit score? Now, I'm not saying discrimination doesn't exist. We all know that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying in that scenario, what's your debt to income? Just because I know doctors that can't even buy an $80,000 house, but they got $80,000 in the bank, right? Well, they can't finance it. Let me say that
because they got so much debt.
They debt, right? So if we got to look at debt. What's her credit score? They didn't say that in the report.
Yeah, like
right?
what are the missing pieces of this puzzle?
Yeah. So the reason I brought that up in this article in general is because the general public, tenants, or even landlords will look at this and be like, oh, a bunch of black women keep getting evicted. I'm not going to rent. You know what I'm saying? Because some landlords, they just...
You know, that never even knocked me on the forehead.
Yeah, so you really need to look at the individual, what's their income, what's their debt, how do they look on paper and make decisions. Now, on the flip side, when tenants see this, you can't go out there with the mindset like, oh, I'm this person, I fit into this demographic, they're not going to accept me. Right? It's all about having your finances in order. What are the qualifications in today's market versus 8 years ago when I was renting?
Your
and
resume.
You have to be prepared, right?
Your renter's resume.
So that goes back to what I said. If you know you're going to move or there's a possibility you may have to move, you always have to be
Start
6
working on
months
your
in the
resume.
Yep. Have your shoelaces tied ready for the race.
Okay. So... to summarize, the question was, or maybe it wasn't a question, but are the tenants left out there in the code?
Yes. I mean, yes, but by some of their own doing. So yes, I say yes. But they're culpable. You know what I mean? It's not like they didn't have information, or it's not like back in the day where information wasn't available. There is so much information out there right now. If you're left in the code, it's part of your doing too.
It depends on the landlord. Some landlords are just assholes, right? Like I had a property where we listed, it was an investor, and they had a property, and this guy, he brought this house for like $50,000. We selling it for $135 now. He's been renting it at $900 a month for the past 10 years. He told the lady he was selling she didn't have a place to go. He actually gave her $3,000 to relocate because he was coming up big time, right? He's like, here's your security deposit back. Here's $3,000. Go out and find you a place, and I'll give you a good reference letter because you were a good tenant. That's just good business.
That's
now,
awesome.
Was she entitled to that? No. But he was making a profit overall. You know what I'm saying?
What makes the landlord an asshole, though?
I'm selling the house, you got to leave. You know what I'm saying? With no notice, no nothing.
Well, they can't do it with no notice. So if they do it within the 30 days.
I'm not saying they can, but they will try.
Okay.
So your landlord...
And people believe that. Like, I've had to talk to so many people, like, listen to me.
Right.
Listen to me. They cannot... Just call an attorney and ask.
Yeah.
They cannot...
Legal aid.
Legally just say leave right now. Because you got people that'll be packing their bags up like, they told me I got to go.
Yeah, my landlord said I got to go. But no, it's a process to that.
So that what makes them the asshole is...
They're trying to bully you out of the property and not taking the proper steps. That's what I mean by asshole.
So you're not talking about the people that are just decided that it's better for them to sell, and they, even though they had a tenant in there for 11 years, at this point
No,
in time.
I'm talking about the
somebody
landlord.
that's trying to do something illegal.
No, I'm talking about the person you renting a house. They don't tell you anything. They found some sucker to buy the property sight unseen. They under contract. They closing in a couple of weeks. They call you and be like, "Hey, I sold the house. You got to move," right? And they know you don't know the law. So you getting nervous, you getting prepared to move, and you like, where I'm gonna go, what I'm gonna do. And like you said, some people don't know, and they pack up and they go back home to mother or grandma.
They're doing something
or
illegal.
friend.
So people that's trying to do something illegal are the assholes, but not the individual. So what if you that person and you didn't tell them prior to that you're going to sell it, but then you sold it, and then now you get a notice saying you got 30 days to move. Are they assholes?
They're not obligated to tell you they sold the property unless it's in your lease. They're obligated to give you the proper notice.
That's not illegal, is that person an asshole, though? We're not talking about, that person did everything legally. So they did everything legally, but they didn't tell you. They didn't forewarn you. They knew
they not
they
a whole ass in that point. They're just an ass, right? So you got the asshole. That's the person that just blind, surprise, slap you in the face with it. Then you got the person that do it right. They just didn't give you that grace to say, hey, I'm selling the property and this is the process.
They didn't give you an opportunity.
Yeah, then they give you your notice, right? Because maybe they scared to tell you, they just don't know or they don't care.
Or maybe they worried that you're going to tear their shit up, because you got a lot of tenants right now that when you tell them, even if you give them the grace, they're pissed off that you gave the grace or that you're selling it, you know what I mean, period. It's now they about to run every buyer away from the house.
Oh, man, buyers come in tenant-occupied property and be like, I told them to fix this electrical, and this little switch over here don't work, and they just start pointing out everything. Good, thanks for the inspection.
Y'all
we still buying
bugs in here.
Yeah, we still buying it anyway, because when you leave, we fixing all of that anyway.
So that's why. So that's why I'm asking, like, you damned if you do, damned if you don't. Sometimes
but that's why
the landlord.
Anytime somebody come to me to list a house as tenant occupied, first thing I say, have you told the tenant you selling? And I say, have you considered selling to the tenant? If they say no and no, that's like a red flag to me. Because their only option is to sell it sight unseen to some sucker, right? But then they still want market value for it. I'm like, you can't get market value is for owner-occupant buyers.
Yeah, that house because you're gonna list it. It's gonna be subject to tenant rights, and then it's gonna be do not disturb, and then sight unseen, and so now it's just gonna sit on the market.
You'll see it once you offer is accepted, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that's not a sucker deal though. I'm saying they're selling it to.
I'm saying the average buyer buying sight unseen, tenant occupied. If they're keeping a tenant, that's different, but. And they're not paying full retail value, right? I'm not gonna pay you $150 if the houses are worth $150 in the area for a tenant occupied property. You ain't show me no rental rolls or not. I ain't seen the house, and I'm not living in it. As an investor, I might want that house for max maybe 120, 110. You know what I'm saying? If it's a buy and hold, but it's just a way you have to go about it when you're selling your property when it's tenant occupied. You have to have a process for notifying a tenant and how you structure your deal. That's all I'm saying. It should be above board with everybody. Look, I'm telling you, I'm selling the house.
Easier said than done, because tenants will tear your shit up. They will get
tear your
upset.
shit up even when you're not selling
when they
it.
get upset though, when they're upset and they feel like you're doing, even though you're not doing anything, you're doing everything the right way. I'm notifying you
That's the
before.
risk of being an investor.
But that's my point though.
Right.
So now that I know that I have that risk, now I'm trying to mitigate my risk by not tipping the op. You know what I mean? I'm not letting them know where I'm at. And so now I'm the asshole.
All right, if they got that mindset, they're going to tear it up at some point, whether after closing or before closing. If they tear it up after closing, somebody still got to deal with that mad-ass tenant.
So as a landlord, you as the seller,
it's offer cash for keys.
That's the other reason why I would say...
That don't even work, no. Because they realize, like, this shit is worth nothing. The $3,000 you was just talking about don't matter, because I'm about to go into a house that I can't even afford. You know what I mean? I'm paying $800-900 a month in rent right now, and to get what I'm
Where
paying
you gonna
$800
go
or
when
$900.
I evict you, though?
That's my point. When you leave here, you about to go pay $1,200-1,300 a month for less house.
Yeah, but if you got two choices. You can take the window or the steps, right?
Yeah.
So you can take the eviction or the $3,000.
So it's hard both ways, right?
It's hard, but that's reality, right? When you're saying they tearing the house up, if there's a buyer that's willing to take that risk, because the buyer knows that the tenant may, I'm not paying you full market value for the house. I'm buying a risk at this point.
Depends on the buyer, though. But I get you.
All right, guys.
Yeah. All right.
That is a wrap.